There is a moment in your life that you don't talk about, not because it hurt, but because you never understood it. A moment when you were supposed to go one way, but something, a thought, a feeling, an interruption, pushed you another. You called it coincidence. You called it a mistake. You called it changing your mind, but heaven called it intervention. There was a day when your steps were redirected. A day when the path you wanted and the path you took suddenly split like a quiet miracle. A day when something invisible shifted the entire direction of your life without asking for your permission. Maybe it was a delay. Maybe it was a sudden discomfort. Maybe it was a door that closed too fast. Maybe it was someone who didn't show up. Maybe it was that strange feeling that made you turn left instead of right, that made you stop walking for a second, that made you look back as if someone whispered, "Not this way." And you'll never know what waited for you on the path you didn't take. Only heaven knows. Only heaven saw. But one thing is certain. Your life did not go forward that day because of your choice. It went forward because something sacred redirected your steps before danger had the chance to recognize your name. This is the story of the path you didn't choose and the God who chose it for you. There was a delay in your life that frustrated you deeply. A moment when everything slowed down, as if time itself refused to cooperate. You were ready to move, ready to go, ready to take the next step, but something held you back. A message that arrived late, a door that didn't open, a person who cancelled at the last minute, a sudden feeling that said, wait. You thought it was bad luck. You thought it was the universe resisting you. You thought it was your plans falling apart again. But heaven wasn't stopping you. Heaven was protecting you. Because somewhere ahead of you, on the timeline you never walked, something was waiting that wasn't meant for your life. A conversation that would have broken you. A place where your heart wouldn't be safe. A person who wasn't who you believed they were. A situation you weren't spiritually prepared to face. You call it delay, but heaven calls it interception. The delay you hated was the shield you didn't see. A holy interruption, perfectly timed, placed in your path to keep your story from colliding with something darker than your eyes could discern. Think about it. What if you had left a minute earlier? What if you had arrived exactly when you planned? What if the door had opened instead of sticking shut for no reason? What if you had forced your way into what heaven was trying to block? You survived because you didn't move when you thought you should. You were redirected by a delay you misinterpreted as disappointment. And one day, you will look back and realize that the timing you cursed was the timing that saved you. There is someone you crossed paths with, maybe for a second, maybe for a moment so small you barely remember their face. A stranger, someone who wasn't supposed to stay in your life, but whose presence shifted something inside you without a single word. Maybe they delayed you. Maybe they distracted you. Maybe they asked for directions. Maybe they dropped something and you stopped to help. Maybe they stood in your way just long enough to slow your steps by a few seconds. You didn't think it mattered, but heaven did, because while you saw a stranger, heaven saw an instrument, a living, breathing interruption placed exactly where it needed to be. What if that tiny moment altered the next hour of your life? What if their presence saved you from crossing paths with something that wasn't meant to touch you? What if 1 second of hesitation rerouted your entire future? Heaven often hides miracles inside ordinary people, not with glowing faces, not with angelic wings, but with small decisions and perfectly timed interruptions. The stranger you ignored may have been the quiet shield standing between you and a day you were never supposed to live. There are angels who look divine, but there are also angels who look ordinary, because heaven uses anything to redirect a soul it refuses to lose. And if you replay your memories carefully, you'll notice something strange. You can't remember the stranger's face, not fully, not clearly, not the way you remember everyone else, because that moment was never about them. It was about you and the divine protection that disguised itself as a human interruption. You didn't meet a stranger that day. You met a miracle in plain sight. There was a door you wanted so badly to open, a place you thought was meant for you, A relationship you prayed would work, an opportunity you believed was the answer, a path you begged God to allow. And when it closed, you felt confused, rejected, ignored, abandoned, as if heaven was silent when you needed guidance the most. But that door didn't close because you were unworthy. It closed because you were being protected. There are doors that shine, doors that impress, doors that tempt, doors that promise, doors that seem harmless, but hide storms behind them. You didn't see the storm, but heaven did. That door you cried over was a doorway into something your heart wasn't built to survive. A place that would have drained your spirit, broken your trust, or reshaped your identity into something smaller than who you were created to be. Sometimes the most painful no is the most merciful protection. There are opportunities that look like blessings, but function like traps. There are people who feel like answers, but are disguised lessons. There are plans that feel perfect until you see the pain they would have brought into your future. And heaven, loving you too deeply to watch you walk willingly into harm, closed the door before you could. You thought the denial was cruel. But imagine the heartbreak heaven saved you from. Imagine the nights you never had to cry. Imagine the burdens you never had to carry. Imagine the damage that never reached your soul because heaven refused to let you enter. One day you will understand. One day you will be grateful. One day you will see that the door that hurt you was the door that healed you. The door stayed closed because your future needed something better than what your past was begging for. And heaven knew that long before you did. There was a moment in your life when something inside you whispered, "Don't go." Or maybe it said, "Not now." Or even softer, "Try another way." It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't come with signs in the sky or lightning on the horizon. It was just a whisper. Fragile, almost ignorable, a breath in the soul that felt like caution wrapped in peace. You almost dismissed it. You almost walked past it. You almost convinced yourself you were overthinking. But something in that whisper felt too real to ignore, too gentle to be fear, too calm to be panic, too purposeful to be random. And that whisper was not yours. It was heaven, speaking in the language it uses when danger is near and your heart is too exhausted to recognize warning signs. You have no idea what that whisper protected you from. You never will, and that is mercy. What if it kept you from trusting someone who would have betrayed you? What if it stopped you from entering a place where your spirit would have been wounded? What if it made you pause long enough for danger to pass by without ever seeing you? Heaven often guides not with thunder but with suggestion, not with force but with direction, not with rules but with whispers. And the fact that you heard it, even faintly, means your soul is still connected to the one who protects you. That whisper didn't change the moment. It changed your path. It interrupted your timeline. It repositioned your future without shaking your present. You didn't change direction on your own. You were redirected by a voice gentle enough not to frighten you, but powerful enough to save you. There is a moment in your story that you will never remember because it never happened. A collision you were supposed to meet, a pain that was headed your way, a loss that had your name on it. An impact that would have changed you in ways you were never meant to carry. You didn't see it. You didn't feel it. You didn't even know it existed because heaven stopped it before it touched your timeline. You think you're alive today because nothing terrible happened, but the truth is deeper. You're alive because something terrible was blocked without you ever knowing. There are nights you slept peacefully while angels fought battles your eyes were never allowed to witness. There are mornings you woke up tired but safe because danger came close and was turned away at the last second. There are places you were never meant to stand in, people you were never meant to meet, paths you were never meant to cross, and heaven redirected your steps so the collision passed by without ever seeing you. If you could see the map of your life from heaven's perspective, you would fall to your knees. You would see everything you avoided without realizing. You would see moments where danger moved left while heaven nudged you right, moments where harm was approaching, but your pace slowed just enough because of a delay, a distraction, a whisper, a stranger, a closed door, a sudden thought. Nothing about your protection was accidental. Heaven didn't just redirect your steps, it redirected the danger too. It placed distance between you and destruction so silently, so gracefully, that you mistook it for ordinary life. You didn't just avoid a collision, you were shielded from it. You were hidden from it, you were rerouted around it, like someone precious being guided through a battlefield they were never supposed to see. The reason you can't remember the moment is because heaven erased it before it touched reality. And the fact that you're still here is proof enough that this invisible protection is still working now. There are prayers you never prayed that were still answered. Protections you never requested that still covered you. Mercies you never expected that still surrounded your life like invisible walls of light. Because heaven doesn't only guard the people who ask. Heaven guards the people who need, the people who are too tired to pray, too wounded to speak, too overwhelmed to understand what is happening inside them. There were days you didn't have the strength to say, "God, protect me," but protection still came, quietly, faithfully, without demanding anything from you. Heaven watched your steps, even when you weren't watching yourself. It followed you into storms you had no idea were forming. It carried you out of rooms that were not built for your spirit. It shielded you from people whose intentions were darker than their words appeared. And it did all of this without waiting for permission. You didn't ask for a guardian that night, but you had one. You didn't ask to avoid that mistake, but you were redirected from it. You didn't ask for strength to walk away, but your feet moved anyway. You didn't ask for protection from heartbreak, but something nudged you back before you gave too much of yourself to someone who would have taken everything. Heaven protects you not because you pray perfectly, not because you make the right choices, not because you live without flaws, but because you are loved beyond anything you comprehend. There is a kind of divine love that refuses to stand aside and watch a soul collapse. A love that moves without being invited. A love that guards even in silence. A love that does not need recognition to keep fighting for you. You never asked for this protection, but heaven gave it anyway. Because your destiny is too important, your purpose too sacred, your heart too uniquely irreplaceable to be left unguarded. And while you walked forward thinking you were alone, someone holy walked behind you every step of the way. There is a version of your life that never happened, a path you were meant to take, a timeline you were seconds away from stepping into, a story that looked harmless from the outside, but would have damaged you from the inside out. You didn't see the danger. You didn't feel the warning. You didn't sense the weight of what awaited you. But heaven did. The path looked normal. It looked easy. It looked predictable. It looked like the logical next step. And that's what made it dangerous. You were about to trust someone who wasn't meant to hold your heart. You were about to enter a place that wasn't meant for your spirit. You were about to choose an opportunity that would have drained you slowly until you no longer recognized yourself. You think you avoided that path because you changed your mind. But minds don't change that suddenly without reason. Souls do. And heaven spoke to your soul before your thoughts even caught up. The path you didn't walk would have reshaped you in ways that were never part of your purpose. It would have taken years from your life, strength from your future, and softness from your heart. And the most powerful part is this: you never even realized how close you came. You were inches away from stepping into something that looked like a blessing, but was actually a burden. You were moments away from choosing something that wasn't meant to grow you. It was meant to break you. And heaven redirected your steps so subtly, so gently, so gracefully, that you never saw the danger leave. You only saw your life move on. This is what divine protection truly is. Saving you not only from the battles you notice, but from the paths you never knew were deadly. One day, you will look back and realize the greatest blessings of your life were the things that never happened, the places you never entered, the people who never stayed, the mistakes you never made. You didn't avoid that path by wisdom. You avoided it because heaven rerouted your future in silence. There is a moment, so quiet, so subtle, so ordinary, that you never realized it changed the entire direction of your life. A moment that looked small on the outside, but spiritually, it shifted your future by miles. You didn't feel the earth move. You didn't hear angels speak. You didn't receive a warning in the sky. All you knew was that for some reason, you changed direction. You took a different street. You postponed a plan. You said no instead of yes. You walked away instead of staying. It felt simple, almost insignificant, but heaven was moving mountains with that single step, because the redirection you experienced did not just save you from a moment, it saved you from a future that was never meant to carry your name. There are futures that look safe but are dangerous, futures that look stable but would imprison your soul, futures that look promising but would drain every piece of your spirit. And heaven, seeing further than your eyes ever could, stepped into your timeline and changed your direction before you could commit to the wrong destiny. The redirection you didn't understand was not about the present. It was about years of your life, relationships you didn't enter, wounds you never had to heal from, scars you never needed to carry, battles you never had to fight, doors you never needed to force open. You think the redirection saved a day, but the truth is more powerful. It saved a future, because if you had taken the other path, you wouldn't be who you are today. You wouldn't have the strength you have now. You wouldn't have the wisdom you carry so naturally. You wouldn't have the softness that survived everything. Heaven changed your direction because you were meant for something bigger, something quieter, something more sacred than what you were about to choose. And the fact that you're here now, whole, awake, wiser, means the redirection worked. It wasn't a delay. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't failure. It was alignment. It was purpose. It was destiny being adjusted before you even knew you needed help. The day your steps were redirected was the day your future was rescued. One day, not today, not tomorrow, but somewhere ahead of you, you will look back and finally understand why heaven redirected your steps. You will see the people you were never meant to love and feel grateful that you walked away. You will see the opportunities you thought you lost and realize they would have cost you your peace. You will see the timing that frustrated you and discover that it was the only timing that would have protected you. You will see the delays, the interruptions, the sudden changes, the whispers, the redirections that once felt like obstacles, and you will understand they were shields. They were lifelines. They were maps to a future you were not ready to see yet, because heaven didn't just redirect your path, it redirected your story. It guarded the chapters you were never meant to read. It closed the doors that hid storms you weren't built to survive. It softened the blows your heart was too gentle to carry. It guided your feet away from places where your soul would have been lost. And as the years unfold, as your steps grow steadier, as your heart grows wiser, you will realize something breathtaking. Your life is not the story of the path you chose. It is the story of the path heaven chose for you. You were not saved because you saw the danger. You were saved because heaven saw it first. And every moment you call luck, every moment you call timing, every moment you call coincidence, was actually a divine hand steering your future toward the light it always wanted for you. So if something in your life shifted, if your steps were redirected, if your plans didn't go the way you imagined, don't be afraid. You're not lost, you're guided. And if this message reached you tonight, it's because you needed the reminder. You are still being redirected, still being guarded. Still being guided by a God who sees further than you ever will. If this film spoke to your soul, stay with us. Follow the divine frequency so you never miss the next whisper heaven sends your way. The path continues, and here you'll never walk it alone.